This is the reality I've seen. In today's society, there are still people in situations like this, still houses in such conditions, existing in such environments. This is the reality I've witnessed. Just now, Secretary Wang asked me what I thought, and honestly, I don't know what the leaders are thinking. What I want to say is, I can only do my small part to bring them a bit of warmth. This footage, taken by a local independent media blogger in Hunan, shows the living conditions of a low-income household. In the video, the dimly lit room lacks any decent furniture, and an emaciated elderly man lies weakly on the bed. Due to coal being used for heating, the room is covered in soot. The blogger mentioned that even staying in the room for a short time is suffocating and unbearable. The elderly man is reportedly 91 years old, and his only son, who remains unmarried, lives with him in this dilapidated house. The blogger has called on the local government to provide basic assistance to the father and son. Some viewers left comments questioning, hasn't poverty already been eradicated? If this wasn't filmed on site, honestly, I wouldn't believe such poor households still exist. Others responded, there are still many families like this across the country. One commenter even directly tagged the People's Daily, urging them to see the real condition of China's people. In fact, this father and son are officially recognized as low-income households by the local authorities. According to regulations, they should receive government subsidies every month. So why are they living in such dire conditions? The answer is clear. Their subsidies have not reached them. Take the example of several low-income welfare recipients in Laiyang, Shandong. They were supposed to receive 5,280 yuan annually, but only a meager 800 yuan made it into their hands. This amounts to just $2.19 yuan a day, less than 30 cents, not even enough to buy a bottle of water, let alone cover daily necessities. These impoverished individuals wear tattered shoes, painting a heartbreaking picture. Investigative journalists found something even more shocking. Village officials control the bank books of low-income welfare recipients. After this was exposed on TV, local officials were visibly panicked. The public was outraged, asking where the remaining 4,000 yuan went. It's lining the pockets of corrupt village officials, they claimed. Frustration only grew when people recalled some officials boasting, I can't even spend my 6,000 yuan salary. Residents say those who don't show respect risk losing their low-income subsidies the following year, as eligibility requires annual recertification. According to villagers, the key factor for local officials in approving subsidies seems to be whether applicants are willing to offer a bribe. The gap between official data and real-life poverty is staggering. According to the Ministry of Civil Affairs, as of October 2023, China only had 66 million low-income people. However, data from China International Capital Corporation shows that there are 220 million people with a monthly income below 500 yuan. These 66 million people are the lowest earners among the 220 million. A simple calculation shows their monthly income is 166 yuan, less than 6 yuan per day, or about 80 cents in US dollars. What does this mean? The World Bank sets the poverty line for the poorest African countries in Afghanistan at $1.90 per day, roughly 15 yuan. In other words, in China, you need to be poorer than African refugees to qualify as someone in need of government assistance. Yet despite these conditions, the Chinese Communist Party still claims to have completely alleviated poverty. Now let's look at more comprehensive poverty data. The World Bank's poverty threshold for lower middle income countries, including China, is $3.20 per day, approximately 25 yuan. By this standard, 400 million people in China fall below the line. For countries like Russia and Turkey, the standard is $6.85 per day, similar to the subsistence allowance in cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. Shockingly, 800 million people in China do not meet this level. Research by Professor Li Shi from Zhejiang University further shows that there are about 900 million low-income individuals in China. Some might say, how is that possible? Even low-paying jobs like food delivery, cleaning, and construction can bring in nearly 10,000 yuan a month. But the real issue is a burden of responsibility, caring for elderly parents and supporting children. As a backbone of the family, these workers may have 4 elderly parents who could need hospitalization at any time, along with 1 or 2 children requiring tutoring. Once a family's income is divided, how many earn more than 2,000 yuan per person per month? This is a reality for most Chinese households. The Chinese government's so-called poverty alleviation campaign only addresses those in extreme poverty, earning less than $1 per day. But what about the 700 million people earning between $1 and $6.85 daily? While they are not officially classified as impoverished, they are still struggling just above the poverty line. This is the truth about poverty in China. On the last day of 2024, the government announced plans to create a low-income population identification system in 2025. The comment section quickly erupted in backlash. Ordinary people hope this new classification will raise the poverty threshold and provide more assistance to those struggling. However, looking at the past implementation of poverty alleviation policies leaves little room for optimism. An elderly woman in her 80s trembled as she stood at the service window, holding her late husband's cremation certificate, only to be told she needed to prove she was still alive. The living must prove their existence, and even those who have been reduced to ashes with cremation certificates must still provide evidence of their death. This is what's happening in China today. What's even more absurd is that this proof of life must be renewed annually. A soldier's mother, holding the family registration booklet, tried to claim welfare. Despite the booklet clearly indicating the mother-son relationship, she was asked to prove she was her son's mother. A local community secretary expressed frustration, saying there were as many as 42 types of certificates required for local residents: proof for injuries, proof for mother-child relationships, and proof of marriage. The town party secretary's response cut straight to the point: "We follow orders from above." At the end of the video, a person sarcastically remarks, "How does the head of the district social security office prove he is actually the director?" Bureaucratic red tape works like this. Policymakers craft these regulations from their ivory towers. The enforcers mindlessly add more layers of complexity, and the ordinary people in need of help are left exhausted, running in circles trying to meet the endless demands for ridiculous documents. The school nutrition program is even more absurd. In 2022, policy to improve student meals was delayed until 2024, and out of 35 schools, only 6 implemented it. The promised nutritious breakfast of milk, eggs, and more ended up with no milk at all. The local education bureau claimed they didn't understand the policy. The most appalling issue is data falsification. Reports claimed all students in the school eat breakfast daily, but villagers knew most children ate breakfast at home before school. Nearly 40% of students didn't participate in school meals, yet fraudulent data was shamelessly submitted to claim subsidies. The administration avoided responsibility, blaming inconvenience, lack of understanding, and the teachers. Another retired soldier, injured in battle, left infertile, applied for welfare due to his age and financial hardship. However, a local Social Security office worker rudely rejected him, saying the quota was full. "You're practically in your grave. How dare you ask for state money? Even if there's money, you won't get a share. So what if you fought in a war? This is peacetime. Why should we keep supporting veterans?" This isn't just mocking veterans, it's tearing down their dignity. To make matters worse, the staff member involved turned out to be the director's son. This veteran once shed blood for the Communist Party in war, yet now, in his old age, even applying for basic welfare seems out of reach. In the end, he had to contact a former subordinate, now a military district commander, to step in personally. Without that intervention, the veteran would have been left to fend for himself. For those in power, slogans about honoring veterans are nothing but hollow rhetoric. The Chinese government's so-called low-income population identification process claims to provide relief, but in reality is just another tool for social control. Take a look. Over the past year, a series of indiscriminate attacks across the country have left the central government on edge. In response, they pushed for increased preventative measures at the source and rolled out sweeping investigations under the labels like the individuals of 8 losses and the 3 lows and 3 few. The individuals of 8 losses refer to those who have experienced failed investments, unemployment, personal setbacks, emotional distress, relationship breakdowns, mental imbalance, psychological disorders, or lack of proper supervision during youth. Meanwhile, the 3 lows and 3 few target those with low income, low social status, low social recognition, few interpersonal connections, limited mobility, and scarce channels for relief. Collectively, these terms point to economically disadvantaged groups. The government fears that if people live in hardship, they may rebel. So whether your poverty is real or perceived, they keep you under tight control. If someone becomes a problem, welfare is withheld, or worse, they slap you with labels like mentally unstable or psychologically imbalanced. This tactic strips the poor of any voice, forcing them to submit and comply. Social tensions in China are escalating, and the public's economic outlook grows increasingly pessimistic. A report by the Guangzhou Public Opinion Research Center delivered a harsh reality check to the government, showing that income and employment expectations continue to decline. Low income, low education, and younger demographics are particularly discontent. Private enterprises are also becoming increasingly bleak about the economic prospects for 2025. In the streets of China, there are countless food delivery workers collapsing from exhaustion, delivering 30 to 40 orders a day just to scrape together 300 to 400 yuan in net income. After rent, food, medical bills, and other expenses, they barely break even. Factory workers in hazardous conditions pull overnight shifts, often leading to accidents and family tragedies, yet the government remains silent. In stark contrast, government officials supposedly earn just 6,000 to 7,000 yuan per month, yet enjoy perks like cars, drivers, housing allowances, gifts, and vouchers. Their salaries are rarely spent, their food is subsidized, beverages imported, and basic living expenses covered by state funds. Our leader, a deputy county magistrate, earns 6,000 yuan a month but lives like someone with a 60,000 yuan salary. Since he's from out of town, he's provided with a 3-bedroom apartment worth about 2,000 yuan in rent, paid for by public funds. Utilities, heating, and maintenance, all free. He's assigned a 200,000 yuan SUV with a personal driver who picks him up daily. The driver's salary is estimated at 3,000 yuan, plus fuel and car maintenance, which adds another 2,000 yuan a month, all covered. He even has a personal assistant to carry his bag, fetch water, and manage his schedule, another 3,000 yuan, though you wouldn't find a university graduate willing to work for that in the market. The office offers fresh fruit daily, cherries and strawberries in winter, along with snacks like pine nuts and pecans, adding up to about 1,000 yuan per month. 5 out of 7 days a week, he attends banquets where each table costs at least 2,000 yuan, excluding alcohol. Not everyone gets an invitation either. There's hardly a personal expense to worry about. Formal suits and casual wear for every season are provided, covering all clothing needs. In terms of food, clothing, and other essentials, he spends virtually nothing. Ordinary people, meanwhile, struggle to survive, trapped by mortgages, inflation, and unemployment. In light of this disparity, how can government officials continue to preach common prosperity without irony? Returning to the issue of low-income population identification, the government claims it aims to prevent corruption. Yet everyone knows these systems often fall into nepotism and local protectionism. When it comes to applying for welfare, the decision doesn't depend on official criteria or personal needs. It's up to the person handling the application. If they want you to qualify, you qualify. If they don't, you're left out. The poorest and least connected individuals often find themselves excluded, unable to even begin the process. Take, for example, 2 elderly mothers in their 80s. One lives alone in poverty, while the other lives comfortably with her children. Yet the well-off mother qualifies for subsidies, while the impoverished one is denied. How does this happen? Families with influence can register their elderly as living independently, instantly meeting the criteria. Meanwhile, the less fortunate are told, "You have children, they should support you." The government knows life is tough for those at the bottom, but instead of real reform, it keeps introducing useless policies. In the end, they just become excuses for officials to exploit the system. For ordinary people, it's either a matter of navigating loopholes to get a tiny bit of help, or watching helplessly as officials manipulate the process for their own gain. Making things worse, public finances are stretched thin. Local governments have no funds to support low-income groups on a large scale. Attempting widespread subsidies could bankrupt them. The simplest solution? Create more categories and labels. One day, they might divide those in need into groups like low, medium, weak, or marginal. The government controls the criteria and divides people however it sees fit. Perhaps only when more people see through these schemes and realize that genuine reform is a necessity will the absurdity decrease. Until then, delivery workers will continue collapsing from exhaustion, and the poor will continue to cry out without being heard. The state machine, under the pretext of maintaining stability, will keep pushing the underprivileged to the brink. Out of the 800 million impoverished people, how many actually receive subsidies? Village committees and street offices deduct their share, leaving little for the intended recipients. To claim even a few hundred yuan, people must run from office to office, collecting endless certificates and standing in long lines. In this money-driven society, impoverished elderly individuals are often marginalized, ignored, or even discriminated against. What they lack is not just financial support, but also care and warmth from society. I don't want money. I want a wife. I don't want money, but he insists on giving me money. What I want, he refuses to give.